recording now. I'm also recording not through Zoom, through a platform called Ecamm, so we can't see any faces or names or anything. All right, so just permission to be here, to absorb information, to have your own personal insights, and also feel free to keep the chat box going. I do like screens on because I can see people, but like if you've got other people in the background, or, you know, I know that a lot of mums will multitask, so maybe you might be cleaning while you're listening to this or putting the kids to bed or whatever, totally fine if you feel more comfortable with your screens off. But interruptions are important. So as I mentioned before, feel free to use the chat box, ask me questions. If there's something that you're not really clear on or you want more information about, feel free to use the chat box. Alrighty, so why are we holding this webinar? So this is the thing. Now, I did a lot of research on this, and coming up time and time again, so many studies showing that 1 in 4 working mums experience mental and physical burnout, which is crazy. We've got, 6 people live on the call. We'll have a bunch of people signed up for the recordings. So that means that a quarter of the people, of the mums, will have some sort of physical and or mental burnout. And that's crazy. Like, that's a quarter of the working mum population. And I just don't think that's good enough. So that is like one of our missions, is to totally change that. So my story, if you know me, if you've been reading our stuff, you probably know a bit about my story, but kind of like just the short version, and I'll probably go into it a bit later, is that I have 2 beautiful girls. How old are they now? 7 and 10 years old. And after I had my first baby, I had quite a traumatic birth. It was like a 3-day labor, heaps of pushing, using all the interventions minus C-section. But in the end, they pulled the baby out with forceps and totally like tore up my vagina and my bowel, and my bladder was completely damaged to the point where I literally could feel no sensation to pee. So for the next 3 or 4 months, I had an internal catheter in. And because I couldn't pee myself. I literally couldn't feel the sensation to pee. And because of that, I was on lots of antibiotics to prevent UTIs, ended up getting 2 or 3 UTIs over the course of the 4 months, ended up back in hospital, an IV drip and all sorts of stuff. So my gut health was ruined. At the same time, my baby, this is my second one, actually, this is Elsie. But my first baby, Poppy, just cried nonstop. The only time she wasn't crying was when she cried herself to sleep. And so I was trying to like just work out how to be a mum as well. And my body felt very broken. And then month by month, a lot of mums usually like not necessarily bounce back, but after 6 weeks, couple of months, they get back to feeling like their old self. That wasn't the case for me, and it's probably not the case for a lot of you guys who are watching or listening back to the recording. So month by month, I just started developing new symptoms. So it was like mental health issues, depression, anxiety, chronic back pain, low immunity, catching all the colds and flus and infections, like getting over one thing, a week later getting something new, low libido, sorry, husband, and skin issues, gut issues, heartburn. I kind of like literally just felt like I was 80 years old by the time I had my second baby, and things weren't getting better. So if you're able to, again, probably like multitasking, doing things while you're watching this, but if your hands are free and you want to pop in the chat box, are you feeling, because I'd like to talk to like specifically what's going on for you as well. So are you feeling any signs of body burnout? And that might be like, well, what are the signs? But are you feeling any physical symptoms of burnout, or are you feeling any mental, emotional symptoms that are just stopping you to be able to show up as like the mom, the partner, the businesswoman, the career woman that you want to be? If you want to pop that in the chat box, I'll come back to that. And yeah, for me, it was kind of like a combination of like so many different symptoms. But the 3 big symptoms I would see in burnt out people, especially high achieving juggling mums, would be Energy issues, so super common to see fatigue, and that also goes along with things like brain fog, physical low energy, but also mental low energy. So kind of like lack of motivation, lethargy, kind of like can't be bothered getting up and doing this day again and again and again. Another one is mood issues. So I used to call myself the dragon mum because especially when my anxiety went like nuts, I was just like a bit of a crazy woman and I would be screaming at my kids and my husband all the time. And yeah, so mood issues could show up like it could be kind of moodiness, irritability. If it's to the extreme, you could have like full blown anxiety, depression, more of those mental ill health signs. And then gut issues. So gut issues can become a problem, and it's probably not something that people think about when you hear the word burnout. Mood imbalances and fatigue are quite common, but we see so many people with gut issues because the moment that when you're burning the candle at both ends, overdoing, juggling all the things, you literally put your system into a stress state. And so in a stress state, you can't rest and digest. And so your digestive organs kind of shut down. You start growing pathogens in your gut, even your immune system that helps to keep your gut and microbiome healthy. Your pathogens will start overgrowing because the immune system can't keep things in check. So gut issues are so common. Things like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, and then from that too, like just other inflammatory symptoms. So pretty common to see skin issues, PMS, painful period. If like any older mamas here, start having menopausal hot flushes, all that sort of stuff. We get a little comment here. So tired body and mind, moody and don't know why, feel like I shouldn't be. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, actually I was talking to someone recently and she was like, I just have like a great life. I have beautiful kids. I have a wonderful husband. I get to go on holidays whenever I want to. I have a great, a workplace that I work at, yet I have no joy and I feel crabby and irritable and just sad all the time. And so that's where it's like, okay, so it's not just situational that people can cause, that you can start feeling like this. There can literally be physiological imbalances and then like inner subconscious imbalances as well. So they're all like the three kind of physical mental symptoms, but the big fear, and this was like huge for me, it wasn't so much that I was just like feeling like an 80-year-old, but it was how it was affecting me to be able to show up in life. So as I said, I felt like the dragon mum. Some people say they feel like the zombie mum. You get stuck in hustle and grind because the more that you become tired and moody and overwhelmed and in pain, like physically in pain, the more you kind of have to try harder to keep up with your workload because your productivity just stops being as good as what it was. And for some people, like if things get worse enough, you can burn out to the point that you can't even function. Now, I didn't have like full on chronic fatigue where I was in bed for 6 months, but there were definitely days, sometimes even like full weeks or two, that I was kind of like just lying in bed all day because I was in so much pain, because I was so sick. You don't want to get to that point because, there's a lot of healing work that has to happen to get you back up and functioning again. Other fears too, like again, probably people don't really connect this with health issues, but a big one is, some people, mums get to the point where, they're trying to build a business or they have a thriving business, but they just lose joy and they just lose the function to be able to get up and serve their clients or their customers, or you show up to work. And so a lot of mums actually end up quitting their job. And that was part of the research that I was looking into too, that when mums start having babies and they're experiencing all this burnout, a lot of mums are just quitting their businesses and jobs. And then that's going to put more financial pressure on your family and cause more stress. And then like body systems burn down even more. Family might even fall apart. That was the big thing for me, like when I was just going a bit crazy and screaming at my kids, at my husband, to the point that our marriage almost broke up, and like I had this deep guilt and fear that I would psychologically damage my kids. And so like we're not just treating health issues, we're like treating a whole life. And that's really exciting because what you can do with your health then enables you to live the best life that you want to live. Then, of course, comes the self-shame and guilt and hatred that might show up because you don't feel like you're being a good enough mom, or you're like letting down the team at work, or sometimes it might even be behavioral habits you're dipping into, like, craving sugar, eating all the things just to try and pep you up with energy, and then you're putting on weight and then you have so much guilt and shame around that. So our ending body burnout solution is to, and I'm going to go over these things specifically, but to identify and treat body system imbalances that are actually causing your symptoms. That's really important because some people just try to live healthy or eat better, maybe even meditate, breath work, yet they just feel like they're not getting to the root cause. And that's because sometimes you can have some pretty intense physiological imbalances that just stop you from being able to heal fully. And then from there, addressing all the root causes, and that comes back to your environment. It comes back to your mind, how you think and feel, and also your behavioral patterns. Are they helping you to heal and to be healthy, or are you constantly like self-sabotaging your ability to heal and be healthy? Okay. And then when you can do this, exciting like payoffs would be to transform your way of being, feel healthy and vibrant, and like, wake up, hear the birds chirping, want to jump out of bed, just feeling excited about life, being productive without doing more. And that's really important because a lot of the times doing often leads to burnout in the first place. But when you not just restore your body, but you also address root causes, you can actually do less and achieve more, which is so exciting. You don't have to like burn and grind and hustle to make money or to build your business or whatever it is. And the beautiful thing too is you can become more present and connected both to yourself, so being so in tune with your body and with what your body needs, but also that's going to have like a flow-on effect to your relationships with your kids and your partner if you have one, and the people that you work with, so that you can become, or like, so that you can be a blessing in other people's lives. Alrighty, so what does this actually look like? So let's chat about the physical imbalances. So I don't know, thousands of labs that I've done and seen in high achieving mums, and these are the top 5 things that I see showing up in labs in terms of imbalances that then lead to these burnout symptoms. Before I get into that though, have you been to the GP already? So look, this is a lovely looking GP, and I know some really lovely GPs, but their testing only goes so far, and you usually only get like 10 minutes with a GP. It's just kind of like the way that the medical system is set up. And so many people, including myself, just got really disheartened. Like, we have so many clients who have gone to see the GP first, they've run all the tests, they're like, all your tests look normal, so it must all be in your head, is kind of like usually the, okay, see you, bye. You got to work it out yourself. That was my experience. And actually, no, I remember my doctor said, oh yeah, like all your tests look normal. Oh, your thyroid is maybe like just a bit subclinical out. I think it's just because you're a mum. I'm like, I have friends who are mums who don't feel like I do. There's something wrong. So that's a bit of a frustration. Like, if you've already started your healing journey and you're getting blocks with a GP, it's because they don't test. They're testing for disease basically, but they're not testing for physical imbalances that still make you feel diseased. Maybe you're at a dead end with Dr. Google. Again, we see this time and time again. People bring in like a bag full of supplements or a list of all the courses that they've done or the diets. And it's not bad to search Google unless you like have health anxiety, then please don't, because you just think that every symptom means that you have cancer, and that's rarely the case. But Dr. Google is like just overload of information. So a lot of the times people just get way confused. They're trying different things, but at the end of the day, you're just guessing, and it often doesn't actually address the real issues. Or maybe you got forum fatigue. So, I know I was there when I was trying to heal my body, and it took many years to try and zigzag and figure out what to do. But I joined all the forums, like all the ones all about gut, or the ones all about hormones. And, there's like so many other people in that forum with the same symptoms saying, I use this supplement and this worked, and I use this diet and this worked, or I'm using all the things and nothing's working. So it could kind of be like positive, but also like super negative. And again, everyone's different and everyone has different imbalances happening in their body and different root causes. So what might work for one person doesn't always work for the next person. You're welcome to put in the chat box if this is kind of your experience so far and you're getting a little bit frustrated. Okay, so this is the body system map. These are this isn't every system in the body, but they're the three main areas in the body that can become burnt out, imbalanced, or you might have something nasty overgrowing. I won't go into all of them, but I'm going to just highlight some of them. So especially like the top 5 things that I see in high achieving juggling mums when it comes to body system imbalances that burn out. So adrenals are very common, and I'll talk about that in a second. Sex hormones for all the mums out there, and dads actually. A lot of dads just get like burnt out in testosterone, and that can cause all sorts of issues. I'm going to talk about the brain, especially for people who own their own business. Your brain kind of doesn't stop. Then there can be gut issues. I'm going to talk specifically around pathogens, and then detoxification. So let's have a look at what that all looks like. Oop, what's going on there? Slide. Alrighty, so this is a lab test of an adrenal, or your adrenals. So your adrenals, for those of you who don't know, sit on top of your kidneys and they secrete your stress hormones, cortisol and DHEA. So cortisol is your stress hormone. It's called the fight-flight hormone. So if the tiger was chasing you, cortisol is going to raise in your bloodstream. And then you've got a nice balancing stress hormone called DHEA. It will rise, and when it meets cortisol's threshold, it will drag cortisol back down, and then you're like nice and relaxed again. And that's nice and normal, and it happens throughout the day, and it should happen to keep you alive and safe, but it can become an issue when you're juggling all the things and you got a lot of stress and you got a lot of overwhelm, and maybe you're eating things that are stressful or you're breathing in things that are stressful. So the more stresses that there are, the more that your body's producing cortisol, and because cortisol is the more dominant hormone, your DHEA levels at some point are going to stop secreting. It's kind of like, can't keep up with your cortisol anymore, so I'm just going to like hang out down here and have a rest. And then the moment that happens, you go into adrenal fatigue. And so that's where you're producing way too much cortisol and you're in this chronic state of fight or flight. And then over time, cortisol starts to deplete. The more depleted your hormones become, this is like the end of the road for adrenal fatigue. You can see that person is not producing any cortisol, the more symptomatic you become. And I just wanted to connect a few, you can have many symptoms that arise when you have these different imbalances, but I thought, don't want to overload you. I thought I'd just kind of pick out some of the main symptoms that arise when you have these body system imbalances. So with adrenal fatigue, which is why it's coined adrenal fatigue, because when your adrenals stop functioning, cortisol is considered your get up and go. So if you're at the state like this person here, not producing much cortisol, then you don't have much get up and go, which means that you can just be low in energy, fatigued, flat. For me, I had stage 2 adrenal fatigue, so not that bad, but it was bad enough for me to feel pretty flat, and it was also a major cause of my anxiety and low immunity issues as well. So the second imbalance that I see quite frequently are female hormone imbalances. So on this test, and imbalances can show up in many ways, but commonly I would see really low progesterone. So again, on this test, person's not producing much progesterone. The reason for that is that when someone, like a woman, is super stressed out and cortisol isn't functioning very well, cortisol literally drags down progesterone. And so that means, so your progesterone should rise nice and high in the second half of the cycle. And if it's not, then you're usually going to get major PMS or painful periods or an irregular cycle or even infertility. To make things worse, if you're producing way too much estrogen, then you can also start feeling like a bit of a nutter. And headaches and migraines are really common too. And things, conditions like PCOS, endometriosis, where women just have a really horrible time with their period, really common when there's very high estrogen. So common symptom that I would see if your sex hormones are imbalanced, especially if you're not producing that progesterone leading up to your period, would be irritability, feeling emotional, snappy, becoming a dragon mum. Maybe you feel like that the whole cycle, but if you become like quite aware of your cycle and your moods, you'll probably notice that things escalate when you're coming up to your period. I talked to someone recently and she said, "Oh yeah, I know I'm about to get my period tomorrow because I'm going to murder my husband." And she's like, "Usually I love my husband and he's the best, but I just need to murder him right now." I felt the same. Actually, I used to get really emotional. I remember back in the day when I used to watch reality TV, watching Ground Force would always make me cry. And then this topped it off. My mum one day came up to me and she's like, "Oh, I've just booked a holiday to Singapore." And I just got so angry and jealous that I started crying. And then the next day I got my period. I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, that was just my hormones." Because it didn't make a lot of sense at the time that I was like angry and jealous and wanting to cry that my mum was going to Singapore and not me. Although, you know, you'd want to go to Singapore. Okay, so this is a test result of the brain. So it's really cool. We can actually look at brain chemicals and neurotransmitters by your wee, which is amazing. It just does it blows my mind that psychiatrists, GPs aren't actually testing neurotransmitters and instead just giving antidepressants, when it's like, you know, maybe it actually isn't the brain. Maybe it's something else that's causing the anxiety or depression. But when your neurotransmitters are very depleted, often shows up as energy issues, anxiety, depression, mood imbalances. Here you can see a super low marker. This little marker relates to the neurotransmitter dopamine. And dopamine's really important for energy, you get up and go, motivation, creativity. And when it drops down, not only can you be fatigued, anxious, moody, depressed, but a very common sign if dopamine levels are low is that you can start having addictions. That might show up in different ways for different people. For some people, they like go to alcohol or to drugs or even like overtraining at the gym because you're constantly trying to get that dopamine hit to try and bring your dopamine levels up. Emotional eating, very common. I see that a lot of the time in mums who are juggling all the things. There's usually emotional, mental reasons behind that, but very specifically, if your dopamine levels are low, then, you know, an addictive pattern can show up in sugar cravings and wanting to eat all the carbs and even like going towards sweetness because you're lacking sweetness in your life. That was definitely me also. Okay, so now we're getting into the gut. There's lots of ways that the gut can break down, but again, without kind of overloading you guys with information, I just wanted to pick up some of the common things that I see. And something that's very common is not just fungi and yeast, but pathogens. So I think I mentioned this before, but if you're stressed out, overwhelmed, that literally suppresses your immune system. So not only can you be more prone to picking up colds and flus and, you know, maybe chest, sinus infections, vaginal infections, but you can also be very prone to developing infections in the gut. And for a lot of women, candida is very common. And you don't have to have thrush to have a yeast infection. It could be in your gut. It could even be in your bloodstream. It can cause major issues, again, like thinking about the top 3 signs or symptoms of body burnout, energy, mood, and gut issues. Candida can cause all 3 of those. But specifically gut issues, so very commonly I would see people having alternating bowel movement issues, especially diarrhea and also bloating and pain. So it's almost like, you know, maybe you have some pretty intense food sensitivities, allergies. Maybe they're actually isn't anything food related. This is where people get a bit stuck too. They're like overthinking things. They're like, oh, I just get bloating all the time and I think it's this food, but then I'll eat this food, the same food the next day and I don't get the bloating. It might not necessarily be that you have food allergies or sensitivities. It might be that you've just got a lot of dysbiosis and inflammation happening in your gut due to pathogens that are causing big issues. And it just depends on the day and the time and how stressed you are and how low your immune system is at the time as to whether it's playing up. And the last body system imbalance that I see time and time again in juggling mums are detox issues. This is a little panel. I mean, most of these markers look pretty good, but these two here, that's not a good sign. So that means that you have burnt through really specific nutrients that help support your liver to detox from toxins, and that one's specific to glutathione. When this marker comes low, it pretty much means that your body has reached a point where your liver has kind of burnt out and it can no longer effectively remove toxins from your body. And that can have a huge impact over your whole body. So big thing that I would see would be inflammation. Like things like achy joints, sore muscles, just feeling toxic and inflamed, and maybe fluid retention, weight gain, difficulty losing weight, super common. Again, going back to energy, mood and gut issues, it can absolutely cause you to feel fatigued. Imagine just like sniffing chlorine all day, like you'd feel pretty rotten. Mood imbalances. So if you're not clearing toxins from the body, those toxins can literally kill off neurotransmitters. So things like dopamine, adrenaline, serotonin, and it can also put more stress on your adrenals, causing more feelings of anxiousness because you're constantly in that state of fight or flight. Okay, so that's the liver. All right. I'm going to go into root causes. If anyone has any questions on the body system imbalances, lab testing, anything like that, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll come back and answer them. Otherwise, I'll keep going through to the root causes. All right. So a lot of people will just treat symptoms. And that's often people's first port of call. They're like, okay, what's going on? I've got, I don't know, anxiety, or I'm starting to develop bloating, or I'm sensitive to all the foods, or I'm getting really severe PMS. So that's usually where you might jump onto Dr. Google, you might go to the health food store, you might get some supplements, you might do a diet, whatever it is. You might even go to the GP and just get some antidepressants. At the end of the day, that's all treating symptoms. And for a small population, that will work, especially if it's just like an acute issue. But a lot of the times, we see it all the time, that doesn't really work. Or if it does, it's just like a little boost of improvement, or, you know, maybe you get some improvement, but it's only short-lived. So in functional medicine, we go one step deeper. So we really want to look at what body systems have become imbalanced. And I just showed you a bunch of lab tests, so we can actually identify using functional lab testing different areas in the body that go beyond what GPs and medical specialists test for that cause your symptoms to arise. And then from there, when you know what body systems are out of whack, that's where you go deep into the root causes. And that's super important. And a lot of people miss that. Some people just kind of like, oh, yep, do the test, take some supplements, do the diet, cool, physically I feel better. But if those root causes aren't addressed, then over time the physical improvement will often start to unravel. And so, yep, it's kind of like, I mean, if you're just wanting short-term relief, that's all good and well. But if you really want to get over your symptoms once and for all and have all the tools, resources, even like to become your own healer and to course correct along the way, that's where you really need to look into the root causes. This is not the best slide, but when you guys signed up for the webinar, I believe you got an email. My lovely husband, Chris, set all this up, but I'm pretty sure in the email he would have said to get the most out of this webinar, do the Ending Body Burnout assessment. If you have done that, awesome. If you're feeling brave and you want to use the chat box, you can even put in like, what score did you get? Did you get a low score? So that would have been below 50%. Did you get a high score? So I think that's above 80%, or were you somewhere in the middle? And if you remember back to your report, the report breaks it down into 4 different areas. So one area is just kind of like around where are your body symptoms, your physical symptoms. And then it breaks your report down into body, mind, and environment root causes. So already you have some clues in terms of, okay, if your body, mind, and environment markers were really high, then it's like, cool, you probably just need a bit of physical healing and you'll be good to go. If you've got other stuff happening in body, mind, and environment, that's what we're talking about in terms of root causes that do need to be addressed in order to fully heal. If you haven't done that assessment after the watching the webinar, I would recommend going and do that. I'm actually going to skip that one. I was going to show you the behind the scenes of some things, really cool things that I've created, but I forgot to set it up. Anyway, that's all good. It's going into like root causes and stuff. Okay, so I like talking about myself. Actually, I don't, but I feel like sharing stories and being vulnerable helps other people to, one, feel that you're not alone, that there's many other people experiencing what you're experiencing, maybe in like slightly different ways. But also too, it can just give you some light bulb moments. It could be like, okay, that's why I feel like I do. So I wanted to just paint a picture in terms of where my body system imbalances lied when I first went and healed my body using functional medicine. And then also the root causes, and the root causes took a lot longer for me to identify because I kind of I didn't have someone like me guiding me through. I invested in, okay, I'm going to study this stuff and I'm going to become a practitioner. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to study with the world's best in functional medicine and learn everything I can from him. And then I'm like, okay, cool. My physical stuff is good, but oh my gosh, I know that there's root causes from an emotional, mental level. So I had the best life coach in Australia. And doing all these things and learning from these awesome people that have gone before me to solve different areas of ending body burnout, that's where, I want to share with you like what that looks like from a root cause level. Okay, so for me, my lab test showed up, I'm just going to say like issues in every one of these squares. Which is also why I love what I do, because I know what it takes to heal these body systems, and also what it takes in terms of like the effort you have to put in, the love that you have to put in order to really restore your physical body. So I had stage 2 adrenal fatigue. My brain was not happy, especially my dopamine levels were really low. For me, that was showing up with, this is really weird. I don't know if I've publicly told anyone this, like in terms of like I've talked to clients and on webinars, but not like social media. But I had this weird tendency where I just got obsessed with checking my husband's messages, like Facebook messages, text messages, emails. Maybe there was a little bit of like weird stuff going on with like, I don't trust him, because my brain was so crazy and my anxiety was so high. But I think at the end of the day, it was literally just this addiction that I needed to check his messages. That stopped when I started addressing my dopamine levels. I had some mitochondria issues, didn't talk about that, but that's basically how well you convert food into energy. I definitely had low progesterone, like hardly producing any, which makes a lot of sense because I had infertility issues, I had PCOS, I had, hormonal PMS, acne, or a lot of the hormonal things. In terms of my gut, so I had a lot of pathogens. I had candida and a nasty bacterial infection called Helicobacter pylori. I had 2 different parasites. So all of those needed to be cleared. My beneficial bacteria was really depleted. My digestive organs actually weren't too bad, but I did have very low, it's called secretory IgA, which is basically the immune system in your gut lining, which made sense in terms of how many pathogens I had in my gut because my immune system just couldn't keep them in check very well. And then I also had detox issues as well, which was really surprising to me because before I did my testing, I'd gone on a toxin-free bandwagon. So I think I was like making all my DIY skincare and cleaning products and eating healthy for probably a few years before I did my detox test. And then I was astounded. I'm like, why is my liver still so bad, even though I'd removed those toxins? And sometimes, I think about my upbringing. I grew up in the country, beautiful, beautiful country, had lovely vegetable garden and, chooks and fresh produce and all that sort of stuff. But right next to our house, my dad had a huge flower farm and we used a bucket load of pesticides. So, my liver might have been struggling even from a very early age, which would make sense because liver issues then cause female hormone issues. And that was a big thing for me even as a teenager. Okay. Oh, this is the wrong one. That's okay. So I've just listed here. So, yeah, and some of these might be really common to you. So for me, I used to always say, oh, my health has broken down since I've had kids. It's the pregnancies, it's the breastfeeding, it's the sleepless nights. And yes, all of that is very, damaging to the body, especially for mums. And I didn't actually give myself a chance to rest. Like I didn't go on maternity leave. I just kept working, especially after my second baby, I had a cesarean and I felt so good in comparison to my first birth that within a week, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. I'm feeling good. Let's get back to work. Let's study. Let's run a business. And that was the worst thing I could have done. In hindsight, I would have been like at least 3 months, if not 6 months. I'm just going to like chill, be a mom, sleep during the day and be happy with that. So I feel like that was quite a big downfall for me. And then both my babies, they weren't terrible sleepers, but my body just loves and craves sleep. So even if I was woken up once in the night to go and breastfeed my babies, I would feel pretty rotten the next day to the point that, my body was physically shaking. Toxins, as I mentioned, so I'd clean my home and my diet up prior to doing the tests, but that's still like 20, 30 years of being exposed to many, many environmental toxins. And a lot of people don't think about all of this electricity, which is great. It's the way we can share. But it can be really toxic, especially if your body is in a state of burnout. Your body just becomes super sensitive. And even for me, I started developing weird tingles in my arms when I was using my laptop on my lap, and also anxiety, really weird. As soon as I put the iPad or the laptop away, those symptoms disappeared. So that's something that can be kind of like a hidden toxin. And the other one with toxins is I have lived in many moldy places. And so mold can just be another source of stress as well. Mold can actually get stuck into your fat tissues. And even if you remove yourself from a moldy environment, you continue spitting out mycotoxins in your body. It's really gross. So at uni, I lived in a house. Oh my gosh, we would clean the bathroom walls and within a day, black mold from floor to ceiling. It was so gross. And back then I didn't realize how bad it was. And then recently we're now in a new house, but our old house, the whole bathroom, we didn't realize, but the whole bathroom was covered in black mold underneath the floor and the walls. I found that out because one day I was walking to the toilet and my floor sank. So they're kind of like things to think about too, if you're like, and some of these things you can start changing right now. You don't necessarily need to jump in and do lab testing. It's like, well, how about you just kind of like focus on some of the root causes that you're aware of now and see if your body responds to that. If it doesn't, you would need a bit more therapeutic support. I was a massive, massive sugar freak. I loved sweetness. I remember being in the supermarket one day with my baby and my toddler, and they were just screaming and I was so stressed out and I was crying. And in my trolley, I just had everything with fruit, like fruit buns. So I bought like hot cross buns. Then I brought fruit bread, and then I brought a Boston bun, and I went home and I just like smashed it all. So I was using sugar to deal with stress and to like comfort myself. Yet it was totally feeding the candida, putting stress on my hormones, and definitely was a root cause. I don't know, you can probably like do this right now if you want to just sort of like see how you breathe, but I was a massive chest breather. I actually didn't even realize that you should breathe from the belly, and that if you're breathing from the chest, and you can kind of tell that if you put like a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly and then you take a deep breath, your belly should rise first, not your chest. A lot of women who have rushing woman syndrome, running around all the time, often start developing dysfunctional breathing. So you'll start actually breathing with your chest and not your belly. That immediately puts you in a stressed nervous system state, which then affects all your other body systems. For me, I was overtraining. Probably a lot of other people have the opposite. It's just like, oh, I have no time. I'm so busy. I know I should be exercising, but I just really can't be bothered. I was sort of the opposite because before kids, my husband, he doesn't have a gym anymore, but he used to have a PT business in Sydney when we were up there. And then we started a gym in Tasmania. I don't know, it's probably like 10 years ago now. And so before kids, I was like super fit. I trained even sometimes twice a day. Like I loved it. I felt good. When I had kids, I tried to continue doing that because that was my identity. I'm like, yeah, I'm the fit person. I'm strong. Yet my body did not allow me to actually train hard. However, I tried to continue training hard to the point that I actually really damaged my back and had chronic sciatica pain for like 18 months afterwards. And it actually didn't start healing until I started doing all my functional medicine work on myself. Then there's all the other stuff like running a business. I was studying at the same time. There was a bit of financial pressure as well because we just started a new business, and, there's always like expenses that never stop and paying a mortgage. So juggling it all. And then on top of all of that, I think it was probably more the state of my health, especially the anxiety and the dragon mum. And my husband working a gazillion hours trying to get the gym working. We had some major marriage issues too. So that was an extra stress. It was kind of like we got to the point where we were just walking on eggshells and really just not even speaking to each other, because if we did, I would usually be the one that would like attack. So all of that was happening. Now, they're all what I would call, I thought they were the big root causes when I was doing my functional medicine work. And I kind of, in terms of healing my own root causes, it's been a journey. So initially it was like, oh yeah, as soon as I did the lab testing, I'm like, Helicobacter pylori, that's the root cause. That's why I feel so crappy. And then I actually realized that, root causes go deeper than that. It's toxins, it's the food that you're eating, it's stress, it's juggling all the things, it's relationship issues. And so it was probably 3 months into my physical healing that I was getting some improvement, but not dramatic. And then I realized that, okay, I got to stop, running around like a crazy person trying to do all the things because my body just can't heal in that way. So I dramatically changed how I was living my life, and that absolutely helped me to be able to heal my body. But recently, so COVID 2020 hit and all was going well, and then all of a sudden there was lockdown. I mean, we were in Tassie, so lockdown was pretty mild compared to some of the other states in Australia. But for us, it was really stressful. So our gym was shut down. We were one of the first businesses to shut down. And all of a sudden, I was actually practicing functional medicine back then too. But even then, it was just like people were freaking out, cancelling appointments. And we were just like, what are we going to do to survive? And so my anxious mind went into overdrive, worrying about all the things. And then probably that first year of COVID where things were changing all the time, and there were like vaccine stuff, and there were like weird things happening too in business. I probably won't go into that. And I started getting insomnia for the first time in my life. Like before that, I had always slept beautifully, but I literally just was lying in bed all night worrying about everything. And then, of course, my body doesn't do well with sleep. Not many people do, but like I really need sleep. And so it just, all of the old symptoms that I thought I had healed had popped up again. Heartburn, my hormones went out of whack. So all of a sudden I went from having a regular cycle for the first time in my life to, whoa, what's going on? Like, where is my period? 60 days later. And so the symptoms came back. They weren't as intense as the first time, but they were definitely there. And then that's just what got me thinking, have I actually addressed the root cause? Initially, I was just like, let's just do all the lab tests again. I did all the lab tests, and actually the lab tests looked pretty good. It's like, where are all the bugs in my gut this time? What's going on? Where are these symptoms coming from? And so then I realized that it's not just physical body burnout that causes symptoms. Like, there's so much mental, emotional stuff going on. And that's where I was just like, okay, I want to get to the bottom of this once and for all. And so more recently, I've been on an even deeper root cause journey, really like uncovering why I do the things that I do. And so I don't know, if you're like me, if you joined this webinar and you saw it was like the juggling working mom, you're probably like not the type of mom that, and not saying that this is a bad thing. In fact, I would love to probably be more like this, but there are some moms who are just so content looking after their children, reading a book all day, going for a walk on the beach. I'm not like that. Like, I have always been to the more tendency of go, 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 do, like achieve, do cool things, build things. And I realized that the patterns that I had created behaviorally and even in my thought patterns were all coming back to dysfunctional beliefs I had about myself. So, there's all the root causes there, but at the very deepest, my root cause, and it's different for everyone, but a lot of the times the deepest root cause is there's some sort of dysfunctional belief that's either keeping you in a sick state or that is causing you to live your life in a way that is causing damage to your body and your health. So for me, and I did a lot of work to uncover this, but what's the time? Yeah, it's almost 8 o'clock. I won't go into like the full story, but for me at the end of the day, my deepest root cause, which is a belief that I created right back when I was a child, was that I was inherently weak and incapable. And there were like events and experiences that happened that made sense to me as a kid, that it's like, oh yeah, because of that, I am actually weak and incapable. And then as I became a teenager and an adult, I continued living my life trying to hide the fact that I was weak and incapable, because that's what my subconscious state believed. And so it showed up in all sorts of dysfunctional patterns. So as a teenager, I loved high school. I'd actually say I played around a lot in high school until year 10, or maybe even more, year 11 and 12 in college. I started getting really good grades, and all the teachers and even my parents were praising me. They're like, wow, you're so smart, you're so intelligent. And so then all of a sudden I I grabbed onto that, and I'm like, yeah, I am smart and intelligent when I do good work and I get straight A's. And so that developed this pattern where I obsessively studied to the point that, I didn't enjoy life. I didn't go out and party. I didn't go out with my friends. Even I remember my family went on a family holiday one day, and I'm like, can't go. I have to study for my exams. I'm like, oh my goodness. And that put my body already in a state of stress. I started developing weird things like fainting, peeing, fitting myself, or the hormonal issues. Back then, I didn't really think it was too much of an issue because I could still study. I could still do the things that I wanted to do. And then later on in life, did a PhD, again, worked my butt off in that because I needed to get perfect grades. I needed to create the perfect thesis, and sort of continued on in my parenting and also in business. And so you can kind of see, if you're coming from that energy where I'm not good enough, I'm weak, I'm incapable, I have to do more, I have to be more, that is often like a root cause as to why you overachieve or overdo. and you feel like you need to rush and be busy all the time. And that has been taking time to like unpack that, unravel that. But now I'm able to live my life with self-permission rather than force. So instead of like, I don't like to use the word busy, like I'm still productive and I still like to make an impact in the world, but I'm not doing it out of fear or out of the need to prove or defend anything. It's coming out of like a very balanced energy, which has then been very interesting. So the things like heartburn, I haven't done any physical healing on that, but that has disappeared, which is really cool. So you can kind of see, like, if anyone is completely new to like healing the body, then, you'll have some pretty amazing experiences physically. But also if you've been on this journey for a while and you're like, oh, I've tried things, I've tried this, things still aren't working, potentially you haven't got to your deepest root cause, which then just means that, if it comes back to a dysfunctional belief, it's dictating literally everything in your life. Okay, that was a bit full on. Hopefully that makes sense. The body and the mind are always connected. So we believe that you cannot heal if your nervous system is dysregulated. And there's two main reasons why your nervous system is dysregulated. One is inflammation, and that often comes back to all the like environmental body stuff. So it's like maybe you've got bugs in your gut that's causing inflammation. Maybe you're exposed to too many toxins. Maybe your detox pathways aren't detoxifying properly. Maybe you're drinking too much alcohol or caffeine or sugar, and that's inflaming your body. The other one is dysfunctional beliefs. So this is really interesting. Like, a lot of people will come to us and they're like, if you ask the question, do you believe you can heal? They're like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. But if you dig deep enough, a lot of people deep down who are chronically ill and really struggle to get out of a burnt out state, deep down they have this dysfunctional belief that they can't heal because whether they're not worthy enough, good enough, strong enough. And that will always keep your nervous system dysregulated in a stress state because your subconscious state is always telling your body that message. So it's kind of like physical, but also inner work is so important in order to heal and to end your body burnout. All right, so I'm so proud of myself. I'm like, I'm going to get this under an hour, and it's 7:58, so that's so cool. If feel free, please pop in the chat box if you have any questions, or even if you want to share your own experience. Totally happy for you to come off mute, or if you just want to pop it in the chat box and I read it out loud, that's cool. But if this has been interesting to you, I guess this is like the way that you can end your body burnout method. So we've created a process. It's kind of like a 3-part process. So the first part of the process is getting answers. It's getting answers to where your body system imbalances lie. That's actually the really easy part. You just spit, wee, or poo in a test. Like, ooh, how easy is that? And like automatically you can see where your body systems lie. And then I don't like to use the word harder work. And then the wholehearted work is then getting into the root causes. So that's what we call spark and shine. So spark enables you to do that inner healing work so that you can become your own healer and unlock your ability to heal rather than just kind of forcing your way to good health or maybe just doing surface level stuff. You're actually going to regulate your nervous system in all the ways that it's becoming dysregulated, working on those so that you can heal. And then, so that's kind of like getting your spark back, allowing yourself to end your body burnout. And then therapeutic protocols is where shine comes in. So that's where, okay, cool, you've done the inner work, you're in a place of healing, you're able to heal now. Now let's like actually work on those body system imbalances that have caused that are causing your symptoms in the first place. So I know some people are clients. If you're not, and this is like, oh yeah, this looks really interesting, I'd actually love to dig into this. This is what you would start with the answers phase. And basically, this is how it goes. So you book in for an initial consult, but even before that, the experience starts. So you're gathering data, you're starting to connect your own dots, doing different like health forms, doing the Ending Body Burnout scorecard, and learning more about yourself so that we can also then start connecting the dots. And that happens in an initial consult where we can look at your health history, look at what happened prior to you even getting sick in the first place, and then look at all the ways that you have tried to heal yourself, get better, which then allows us to prescribe some lab testing. So whatever makes sense for you, you do the lab testing based on the body systems that I showed earlier. And then after you do the lab testing, and this is always a question I get asked, you don't do the lab testing in clinic. I've had, because we do virtual consults as well, I have had people bring their wee to an initial consult. I'm like, no, it's okay. You take your wee, your spit, your poo at home. Sometimes I get people to do a blood test, and that's at the pathology centre. When you get your lab test back, you then do catch up for a lab review consult, and that's where we look at the big picture, where your imbalances lie, and then create the best action plan for you in terms of, addressing your physical healing, as well as like, are you ready, willing, able to get into root causes? Great question, Fiona. How do you get to the bottom of the root causes further than the lab tests? Yeah. So this is kind of where a Spark and Shine come into it. So after you get your lab tests, Spark is kind of, I don't really like to use the word general program, but everyone kind of needs to do Spark. And that is starting to tap into the root causes, especially around the beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves that either caused our sickness or are keeping us in a sick state. And there's different ways we do that. So depending on what way people choose in terms of working on their root causes, I have created a really cool new platform in our online portal where I've actually broken down every single body system. So all the ones that I showed on the root cause, the map, so your adrenals, pathogens. So every one of those body systems now have a little questionnaire connected to it that identify the root causes. And then we help people to actually address those root causes. So if you've kind of been on the health journey for a while, there might be a bunch of stuff that you're like, oh, I've ticked those off. But, maybe there's some deeper emotional, mental things or like those dysfunctional beliefs that I was talking about that haven't been addressed yet, just because there hasn't been the ability to or the awareness to. And so we do that like through live coaching calls, either in a group or one-on-one, and we have different resources in our online portal where you can it usually requires a lot of introspection and brain dumping. So we have like private journals and stuff where people can actually start unpacking their story. And then in terms of like other sort of, I guess, surface level root causes, heaps of resources in terms like, okay, here's your checklist for checking out mold in your house. Here's a checklist for how you can improve dirty electricity in your home, because a lot of people probably don't want to go live out in the mountain off grid. Oh, that would be like amazing. And I know there are people that do that. But, if you're a busy person, got a business, have a career, you probably are exposed to a lot of EMFs. So there's different, like, I guess, checklists that you can work through to address those things. Does that kind of answer the question? So we've got a process. It's all like set up in our online portal, and we take people through that process. And it's really specific to you too. So it's not like, not everyone needs to, say, for example, address emotional eating because maybe that's not a root cause for you. Or not everyone needs to clear out the toxins from their skincare because they've already done that. So it's a little bit like a choose your own adventure, but with guidance in terms of questionnaires and lab testing and that sort of stuff. All right, any other questions? Pop them in the chat box if you do. So if all of that sounds cool, would probably be for people who haven't worked with us, but if you wanted to start the process of connecting the dots, you are very welcome to scan this QR code, and that'll actually take you straight to our website where you can book in for an initial consult. And you get a lot in that consult. It's $197. Actually, I reckon it probably is worth even more than 297, because we also have our online answers portal, which has a lot of resources that helps you to like have some breakthroughs in terms of like the physical body system imbalances. And really that consult is looking at your overall health picture, connecting the dots, gathering data, and for some people, I even start doing some dietary lifestyle type treatment while we're waiting to get results back. And we are, if you don't know, we actually have a partnership with Free to Shine. So they're an amazing child organisation company who keep girls in Cambodia safe. And safe in schools and out of sex brothels. So for every person that books in for an initial consult, we actually give 1 day's worth of safety and education to girls in Cambodia. And we do that like because we love to do that. We love to give back, but also like our big vision is that we see a world free of abuse, where all children grow up healthy and happy, where children are led by healthy and happy parents. So you probably joined this call like, you know, wanting to get yourself better, although I'm sure if you ask yourself enough questions, you're probably also wanting to show up as the best role model mother for your children, be more present and loving, and help them to grow up healthy as well. My little thing was like, I need to get myself better because I don't want my children to end up like I was. And if you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting, but I've got some questions, you're very welcome to instead book in for a free discovery call. This would also be, I guess, for clients or past clients who haven't actually joined the Ending Body and Burnout method, where we go through Spark and Shine. So yeah, feel free to like reach out, and if you like have any further questions or anything, then we're happy to answer those. And if you haven't already, we also have a free Facebook community group that you can join. Don't you love all the QR codes that my very smart husband created? We will create I think that's the end. We will create there we go. We'll create a page on our website where you can get access to the slides and to the recording if you want to. So you can also just scan those QR codes when you have the slides. All right, awesome. So if there aren't any questions, I am going to love you and leave you and probably go and tidy the house because the kitchen was very messy before, unless the kids have done it. And yeah, thank you so much for those of you who joined live. It was awesome. And thank you for those who are listening back to the recording. Alrighty. See you, everybody.